Hi there everybody, it's Verity here from inkybutterfly.com. Thank you for joining me today for another card making video, and we're going to make a variation of this card today, just to create a little bit of a fun background, just something a little different. That's going to be using the Best Label punch, this little teeny tiny punch, just to build up a background there, and the sentiment is going to be the biggest wish. Photopolymer stamp set. This is a carrying over stamp set, so this is really great staple for your cards. Now I find it particularly useful for guy cards, and for, you know, we could easily mix this up and use more feminine colours, or a rainbow of colours, or whatever you want really, to create a birthday card if you're really unsure what theme you want to apply to it. So, you know, if the recipient isn't into anything in particular, so in my case this is a masculine birthday card, and, you know, I didn't want to put a boat on it or a car on it or anything like that. I wanted something a little bit a bit more generic. So that's what we're doing today. So obviously this is in a range of blues. So along the background there we've got 6 shades of our blues, which are our current colours. Okay, there are no new colours in this. This is just the current colours. Excuse me. Night of Navy, Starry Sky, Orchid Oasis, Tahitian Tide, Balmy Blue, and Pool Party. The stamping is also, it complements the colours on the end. So I've got Night of Navy from the end there, and I've got Pool Party from the end to bring in on the sentiment. Okay, and then the background is just brushed over with any residual blue ink that I had on my blending brush. Okay, so it's not a particularly descriptive colour. Okay, it was just the residue of what was left. So that's how we're going to go forward. I'm still going to use 6 shades, but this time in green. Okay, so I've pulled out Mossy Meadow, Shaded Spruce, Garden Green, Old Olive, Granny Apple Green, and Soft Sea Foam. Those are the shades that I'm going to use today, and I'm going to punch out 6 of each of these. So on the sample card I've just shown you, I've got 6 across, 3 down. I want this to go further down the card. I want it more of a rectangle, and I'm not sure whether I'm going to need 5 or 6 of these rows of colour yet, because it'll kind of depend on how the spacing works out. But if I punch out 6, which is probably going to be the maximum I'll need, and we can then have the flexibility to either add that last row or not. Okay, so we're just going to punch those through, and it's a really nice little punch, which is easy on the hands, so it's nice and quick to do. I've done backgrounds before using die cuts. There's some samples in the catalogue as well of that kind of thing. And there's other punches that you could do something similar with as well, that are larger. Just need 2 more. Just not quite wide enough to get them across there. So Granny Apple Green, great way to use scraps as well. So if you wanted to use like a menagerie of colours, great way to use up those scraps. You might even have some retiring colours in your scrap bin. that you want to use up, this would be another fun way to use those as well. Right, okay, so we've got our little piles of coloured little tag labels. That's using the best label punch. And then for this card, I'm going to use some basic white to build up the background. So I've already cut this to the width that I know fits those quite nicely with this nice little skinny border. So that's the border I've chosen to use. If you wanted to change that up, then you could do so. I think it's 3.5. Yeah, so it's 3.5 across. Okay. Now I'm going to turn it on its side and work down the page across. So I'm left-handed, so I'm going to work from right to left. And it doesn't matter whether you start with a light or dark, really, I guess. So, but I think it's easier to line up the darker cardstock first, and I'm going to use wet glue. Now, ordinarily, as you know, I'm more of a not tear and tape. What's that called? Stamp and seal kind of girl. But for this kind of thing, where you want to be positioning things reasonably accurately, you're going to want a little bit of wriggle room on it. So we're going to lie these down, or lay these down even, just trying to keep that border on the edge there reasonably straight. And I've deliberately cut this long. It's actually 6 inches long, which is going to be more than what I need. But again, that was just to sort of factor in the fact that I am at this point unsure whether I'm going to use 6 rows or 5 rows of the colours. Okay, so that's my first row down. So hopefully you can see that's reasonably even, I will hope. Okay, and the reason I've cut the width is just to try and sort of minimise any sort of wibblage. So if I get to the end and I've got kind of a nice square edge, then I've kind of, you know, I'm on the right track, if you know what I mean. Okay, so I'm going to carry on doing that. I'll leave it on camera so you can see it, but I'll speed it up and continue to build those up. Okay, so we've got I've got the 5 rows on there now. So I'm just going to bring in a card base. This is just a thick basic white card base. Let's just crease that whilst we're here. Okay, this is where you have to try and use a bit of imagination in terms of how much room you want to have down here. So what I'm trying to imagine is if that row was on there and we cut it down, would I be able to get a border on it? And I think I would. So I'm going to actually continue and put on that last row. Okay, so we'll just put our soft sea foam. This one is, so just to remind you that colours so far are Mossy Meadow, which is in the neutrals. Then we've got Shaded Spruce, that's a Regal, as is Garden Green and Old Olive, I think. Is Old Olive a Regal? Granny Apple Green is a Bright, and Soft Sea Foam is a Subtle. Yeah, I think they are all Regals. Just glancing up at my cardstock storage. It's interesting actually, in terms of storage, by the way. I use the stamping storage for the ink pads and markers, which is very, very handy. But I've got all those in rainbow order because I like to see how the colours kind of work together. So when I was picking out this ombre look, all my green ink pads are together, and I can see how they might work together. But for my cardstock, I tend to keep it in the colour families, which so generally I work out my colour combos, use my pads, bring out the pads and have a look at them and see how they fit together. And then pull out the cardstock because I know what colour families they're in. So that's going to look like that, okay, and when we cut that down, it's going to be a shorter border at the top and the bottom, but I think that's going to work out okay. The other thing to bear in mind as well is if you are covering up that centre bit and you've only got some smaller scraps, you may find that you can get away without putting some extra ones in the middle because you're going to cover it up anyway. But if you're not sure how your design is going to work out, that could be a little bit tricky. So I'm just going to give that a moment or two to dry, which means we've got an opportunity to stamp the sentiments. So again, I've pre-measured the width of this, and it's 2.25, yeah, 2.5, which nicely fits the sentiment that we're going to be using. So, you know, we can mix up the sentiment and everything, but, you know, I can never have enough birthday cards because, you know, that is the most common thing that we send now. Okay, so what I'm going to do is actually replicate something I did earlier, or last week or whatever it was, where I used the Best Wishes with the gorgeous Stamparatus. So we're going to do this without the Stamparatus because that's now, I'm afraid, sold out. There are no more available. So we're going to work from the bottom and stamp this by hand using one of my favourite blocks. This is the H block. So if you're starting out, H and D are the ones that I go to all the time for stamping, and then you can always add to the collection as you go. That's not to say all of them aren't useful. They all have their place, and you should always use a block that's sized appropriately for your stamp. But these are the two that I find I go to the most. So there is a bundle of blocks that you can get, so that's worth getting, and then maybe topping up with a couple of extra H's and D's, in my opinion. So it kind of depends on what kind of stamp sets you like and all that kind of stuff, but these are the ones I reach for a lot. If you're interested in what I use. So what I'm going to do is select which colours I'm going to stamp my sentiment in. Now, soft seafoam is a bit pale, in my opinion, for sentiment, so I think Granny Apple Green would be nice with Old Olive and then maybe some shaded spruce. And I'm going to flip it the other way around, so I'm going to go from light to dark down the page rather than dark to light down the page, if that makes sense. Okay, so what did I say? Shaded spruce. Okay, sure, shall we do? It's definitely Granny Apple. And then what do you think? Do you think we should do Garden Green or should we do Old Olive? Let's get them both out. Garden Green or Old Olive? It's a bit of a tough one, isn't it? I might go with Old Olive. I don't use Old Olive a lot. I don't use Garden Green a lot, to be fair. I wish we'd have kept Pear Pizzazz, because Pear Pizzazz would have been perfect. But hey ho, is what it is. Okay, let's do it. Let's do it. Birthday is going to be done in shaded spruce then. And I'm just using the block lettering rather than this in that Best Wishes stamp set, or Biggest Wish, sorry, stamp set. you get all the words. So there's hello, friend, thanks, happy and birthday, and you get them in this block lettering and in like a cursive lettering, not cursive, sort of joined up writing, you know, yeah, cursive. Just trying to think what they call it. So you can mix the fonts should you wish to. I'm just going to stick with this bold lettering, mainly because I'm using it for a masculine card. I think it just lends itself a little better, I think. But you know, your choice, what you want. So here we go with the next colour, which is Old Olive. Now, I wonder if I should zoom in, I wonder if you can actually see what I see through the block a little bit. So what I'm going to look for is the edge of the photopolymer around the lettering. I don't know whether you can pick that out on there. So the lettering sort of stops there, but the photopolymer stops there. And I'm using that to space out the stamp visually. So I'm going to hover over the top, but look for that edge of the photopolymer touching the edge of the stamped image. And I'm going to look through my viewfinder to see, so hopefully you can kind of see that, the edge of that photopolymer just coming across the top of those letters. But I'm going to have to pull this a little closer just to make sure I'm lining that up. So I'm just looking to eyeball that sort of in the middle. Just hover over it, and when you think it's in the right place, pop that down. Like so. I'm going to clean that off because we need to use it again. So normally when you're using a series of inks, you'd like to try and work from light to dark so you don't carry over any ink. But if you just make sure your stamp is nice and clean between your ink applications, then you shouldn't have any problems with that. Now I know my Granny Apple Green ink pad needs a bit of re-inking, but I'm waiting for an order of those. So, and again, look, I'm looking for that photopolymer to hover above those existing letters, and because we've got the same word, the bottom of the H is going to line up hopefully reasonably straight, otherwise it's going to look a bit wonky, but let's hope that that's okay. So hover over the top and then press down once you're happy with your alignment. Okay, so I hope that gives you an idea of how you can line up things. It just takes a little longer when you're doing it manually like that without a stamp positioning tool. Okay, but it can be done, especially with something that's quite blocky like that. It's not too bad. So now we just need to trim this down to size. So again, we can use elements on our trimmer to try and make sure that we get a nice even border. So what I will be doing is lining up the sort of stamped image with the channel that's there ready for the blade to run up and down. So I don't know whether, again, if I zoom in, let's find the zoom, whether that makes it a little easier. So the channel is here, because it's clear, it's kind of hard for you to see really. Channel's here, running along there. Okay, but we don't want that down. So it appears that if I push this cardstock along, it's going to start peeking out from the left there. Okay, hopefully you can just see that coming through there. So I'm going to shuffle that along until it just sort of is hidden by this plastic, I don't know what you call that, ruler thing. Okay, and then I'm going to cut it, and that gives me approximately the border I've left at the bottom. It's not going to be a precise measurement, but it gives you something to eyeball to get that reasonably straight. Okay, so I think that's pretty much as close as you're going to get on that. So again, let's come out again on that. Okay, so I think from a distance, if you haven't got your ruler out, I think that would pass as being reasonably well lined up. Oh, I need that still, sorry. Similar thing with this now, but instead of a stamped image, I'm going to be lining up the punched elements there. So again, just so they're just about covered by the little guard here, and cut. And again, you're going to get a reasonably even border around the edge there. Okay, brilliant trimmer, brilliant trimmer. Again, if you haven't got one, then I would say that's very much worth getting. So now we've got a sort of frame for our sentiment. Okay, so at this point it's up to you whether you decide that you want to potentially layer that up. I'm not going to bother. I'm going to pop it up onto some dimensionals, but what I might do is just run around the edge with a marker just to pull out that edge a little bit. So it's just a case of which colour to use, really, to be honest. So we might use the Mossy Meadow actually, because we do have a blend in that, and I like to use blends for this. You could use the ink pad, you could use the Stampin' White markers, but I find this gives you a nice smooth effect. So if you just sort of run your marker around the edge, and the reason this gives a nice edge is because the ink will bleed through those cut edges in a little bit. Sometimes it bleeds more than others. It's sometimes a little unpredictable, but I don't mind that. If you don't want it to bleed as much, I would recommend using your ink pad or Stampin' White marker to apply this ink. And the more you add, the more likely it is to bleed a little bit into that edge. So you see how that top edge hopefully has bled a little bit in, but again, that's fine, I don't mind that. Sorry about the throat today, just a little bit sore. Right, I'm going to pop this onto some dimensionals just so that it gives it another little bit of a lift. Okay, and then this is just going to go onto our car base with some Stampin' Seal. But before I commit with the glue, what I'm going to do is eyeball where I think it needs to go, because I know I haven't got an even border all around. Okay, which is a little frustrating, but it is what it is. Okay, so I need about, yeah, okay. So I just wanted to be sure I knew what I was aiming for before committing with the tape there. So it's about there, and then I'm just eyeballing up and down there to make sure that that looks about even. That will, oh, and I put it on upside down. Woolly, never mind, doesn't matter. Should have been that way around. Let's pretend it's that way around, shall we? And then again with this, because we want to get the line of get everything lined up, a blob of your multi-purpose adhesive over the top of your dimensionals is just going to give you a moment or two just to make sure you've got that lined up where you want it. Okay, so just looking to have this peaky bit out in the same sort of depth, and I'm looking at how much I've covered on the left and the right. That looks about it. So once you're happy you've got it where you need it, you can give that a bit more of a press, and that's it. Okay, so that's how you would make one of these nice funky backgrounds. Of course you could add some, if this was a bit more of a girly card, you could embellish that with all sorts of things, all things pretty. Because I've used a bigger punched background, I haven't done any inking. Okay, so you've got a sort of mishmash of how you could do that. You could use a strip and just go down the side of a card, maybe go across the full width of it, and you can use them in this orientation or that orientation as well. So you might want to think about how you do that. So there's loads of ways you could use this. You could offset it into like a brick pattern as well. Okay, loads and loads of different ideas. So I'd love to see what you decide to create with this kind of idea. Do share them with me, tag them in your posts and things. Supplies I've used will be in the description and available in the online store. Thanks ever so much for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed that and my Australian card. Stay safe, take care, I'll see you soon. Bye.